And during the first year, for example, there was real problems with how in the UK, how we educate our children. But then the second year came around and they still hadn't worked it out. There was the question we kept asking was, we don't see where the strategy is. I can't see where the strategy is. I never got the feeling that there was a strategy. And of course, that is exactly where crisis management comes in rather than emergency response. So, Caroline, I can see you nodding your head. I'm looking forward to looping around and bringing that in, because that is where the responsibility lies. That is the responsibility. There's been a word, I don't think we've used it yet. There's two words, actually, which I don't think we've used yet. One is leadership, and the other is trust. And I think that very quickly we stopped trusting our government. I don't think we felt that our government was in control of this. They were trying to bluff us, but they weren't. And the leadership, just trying to find that leadership that would take control of this and give us the feeling that, okay, we're of course, they said we're all in it together, but that we're moving forward in a managed way. So those are the points that are coming out from that. I think, again, plenty to talk about. Nadine, we, of course, have been involved in a number of projects together, one of which, and I keep coming back to this, it was a great, great project, which was the Erasmus Plus Build program, and which was building universities for leading in disaster resilience in Indonesia, which we worked on together, you were leading on. But that was also looking at building national resilience from a different perspective, and looking at governments, looking at communities, and looking at universities as centres of excellence. So I'd be very interested. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on some of your experiences around that, some of your experiences from the University of Gloucestershire in empowerment from pandemia and moving forward. So please feel free to share your thoughts.
Hi, thank you, David. Yeah, I think Build was a very interesting project for those who obviously meet me for the first time. My name is Nadine Sulkowski, and I am a senior lecturer in systemic resilience management at the University of Gloucestershire. So Caroline and I share a lot of passions in that field, in a way that we look at resilience systemically. And Build has been very eye-opening, I have to say, particularly in relation to the role of universities in building wider resilience. And I think COVID is a very good example here, because we started the project in Indonesia in December 2019. And a few weeks later, we were all locked down. And we were basically managing a disaster resilience project, an international disaster resilience project, within this context of the global pandemic and the global lockdown. So this meant we couldn't meet in person, we couldn't travel to Indonesia. Our partners could not travel to us, but also we were implementing this project whilst universities themselves had to understand how to adapt to that crisis, how to move their teaching online, how to deal with students in halls of residences, how to deal with communities. And I have seen a lot of examples where particularly our Indonesian partners have adapted very quickly to that new situation and have thought about, okay, what does this actually mean in terms of us continuing with our community outreach activities? How do we need to change them? How can we help communities be sort of prepared for what's coming, or how can communities respond? So many of our universities, for example, have set up COVID wards. So those who are teaching medicine or nursing programs, they have set up spaces where people with COVID could isolate. Some of our universities in Indonesia have helped business owners move their physical shops online so that the business could continue. So there were a lot of examples where universities were very quick in thinking about how to support the business community, local communities in responding to this. And interestingly, in Indonesia, obviously, Indonesia is called a laboratory for disaster research, and natural disasters continue to happen regardless of where there's a pandemic going on. So one of our universities in Yogyakarta had to move an entire campus, and we're talking about thousands of students being taught and accommodated on this campus from the exclusion zone of Mount Merapi. Because Mount Merapi was about to erupt, and one of the campuses was in a zone that simply wasn't safe at that time. So you have to think about the sheer logistics of moving teaching facilities, which can be used by lecturers for online teaching purposes, for example. Halls of residences, catering facilities, student services, libraries, and so on. Moving that to a different location at the within the context of the pandemic. So there were huge challenges. We have seen some of this at the University of Gloucestershire as well. So, for example, our fashion courses have started to produce PPE. So our fashion design studios have been repurposed. Many of our nursing students have supported hospitals and care homes here in Gloucestershire. So basically, they have been moved from their normal study program to internships in order to increase the staffing capacity here in our local NHS trusts. So we have seen some of that adaptation that Caroline was mentioning earlier as well. So I've got the ventilation challenge. That was quite interesting. So what I have seen from my perspective during the implementation of BUILD was that actually universities were quite central in supporting that adaptation capability. And I think that's obviously, David, as you know, this is my passion, because I'm very passionate about understanding how universities can support their various stakeholders becoming more crisis resilient. So BUILD was a fantastic experience and a fantastic learning opportunity for us all in understanding that particular aspect. And in part, the Empowerment for Pandemias project has been born out of those experiences and out of some of the connections that we have made during this time as well. So I'm going to stop now because, as you know, otherwise I can just carry on talking.
I think that's true for all of us. It's really interesting because, and I don't know how other countries did it, but I have a feeling it was not different. But in the UK, the universities almost criminalized their students in that they put them into lockdown. They sort of barricaded them. They weren't allowed to move out. They were incredibly restricted in what they could do. There was pretty well close to barbed wire around, the campuses to stop people moving in and out. Incredible level of sanctions, very little support. I think all three of you have mentioned mental health in some ways and the stress of mental health. I think that was incredibly underreported and under-considered. The fact, I mean, I imagine that for most of us, the four of us and Francesco, I imagine that it's the same for us. That, to be honest, it wasn't so bad for me. It wasn't so, it was disruptive, but it wasn't so bad. But if you've got three kids under the age of 6 in a 2-bedroom flat on the 4th floor, then it's bad. And you don't have a job, then it's bad. And it seemed to me that we did not consider that, or those weren't considered. And also, after COVID, we talk about post-traumatic stress disorders, which says, you've got to release that. No, it was like, okay, COVID's over, carry on, get on with it. And it's like, we've completely forgotten about it.